So good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for joining us this afternoon. My name is Paul Webster, and I'm the subject advisor for Pearson's Drama and Performing Arts qualifications. And this session is intended to support any teacher new to GCSE Drama or anyone who would like a refresher. So here's an overview of what we will be covering in this session. We're going to look at the components. We're going to look at the admin support and the key dates that you'll need to know, and we'll look at the free resources that are available to you. As we all know, the impact of COVID-19 on students and teachers has been significant, and all assessments that were due to take place were cancelled in March. And students this year will be awarded qualification grades this summer based on estimates made by their teachers. As it currently stands, we are still awaiting confirmation from the DFE and Ofqual in regards to any changes that might be made to the requirements of the qualification for students in the next academic year. Information is due later this week from Ofqual about the autumn series for the current year 11s and 13s. And we hope that information we need on next year is going to be released by them before the end of term. When this information is released by Ofqual, we will be in touch to provide you with the guidance you need to move forward. With this in mind, the information I'm going to give you today is based on the assumption that the requirements for the assessment of the components will remain basically the same. We will share with you any new developments and guidance as soon as we can. We put information on our website on all pages in the top right-hand corner. It's labelled COVID-19 update. Plus we share information through email updates on our community pages and on the subject page for drama and performing arts, and through social media such as Facebook and Twitter. So let's have a look at the qualification itself. The content has been organised into three components. Component 1 focuses on devising a performance from a stimulus. It's worth 40% of the qualification and is internally assessed. Component 2 focuses on interpreting a performance text as a performer or designer, and it's worth 20% of the qualification and is assessed by a visiting examiner. Component 3 focuses on exploring a text so it can be interpreted for performance, and evaluating live theatre, and it's worth 40% of the qualification and is assessed via a written exam. Throughout this specification, there are equal opportunities for performers and designers. Students can do both components 1 and 2 as a performer or a designer, or can perform for one and design for the other. Component 1 can be completed in years 10 or 11. It's internally assessed by you and submitted to us for moderation in the final year of the student's course, i.e. year 11. Devising may be a new skill for your students and may not be something you've taught before or for a while. And it's important to remember that the devising component is worth 40% of the qualification, and so it's key that students understand the devising process and how to document their own creative processes. It would also be helpful to consider trialling a range of stimuli across a number of weeks with your students before you choose the ones that they'll use for assessment. For guidance on choosing stimuli, activities to help students create and develop, ways of workshopping ideas, and methods of ensuring the process is documented, please see the guide for devising that we have on our website, and later on I will take you on a bit of a whistle-stop tour of the website. So here is an overview of the whole devising component. Students will work in groups of 3 to 6 performers to devise a piece of drama. The group can also include up to 1 designer for each design role. So in total, that could be up to 10 students working together. Students will be able to create and develop their ideas from their own choice of stimulus. They can take a performance or design role, and the design roles are set, lighting, sound, and costume. All students will document the practical creation and development of ideas, along with the analysis and evaluation of this process and the performance of the devised work. The time requirement for the performance is in the specification on page 10, but we'll have a look at that in a moment. As teachers, you should choose between 1 to 3 pieces of stimuli, and these may be one or more a combination of the following. So it could be a textual stimuli, for example, it could be a novel, a poem, a story, a letter, or factual material. In fact, the only thing is that they can't use is a play text. Visually, it could be a painting, a photograph, a film, or an artifact. Aurally, it could be a piece of music, a soundscape, or a recording. And it could be an abstract stimuli, so it could be a word, a theme, or a mood. In terms of the grouping, in terms of COVID-19, we will get onto that in a moment. So here is the information about the group sizes, and as you can see, if there are 3 to 4 performance students in a group, we usually say 10 to 15 minutes. If there are 5 to 6 in the group, it's 20 to 25 minutes. If you add designers onto that, the timings don't change. So to maintain social distancing rules, it may be advisable to consider smaller performance group sizes, working in groups of 3 to 4 rather than 5 to 6. In light of social distancing, there is no requirement to use a non-assessed individual to bring the group size to the required minimum of 3 in this exam series. So if you are new to teaching this qualification and you're going straight in with a group of year 11s, this information is really relevant for you. If you're starting from scratch and you've got a new group of year 10s, then you can take this into consideration for later in the term if you're going to do component 1 in this academic year. But if it's not going to happen until year 11, then you don't necessarily need to worry about this, because this guidance that I'm giving you now is specific to the next academic year. So if you have fewer than 3 students in your centre taking GCSE Drama, they can devise as a pair or as an individual. Or if you have a group of 3 and one student drops the course or is not entered, then the group may continue devising as a pair. Under any of the circumstances that we've just gone through, then you need to get permission from our drama assessment team, and their email is drama.assessment@pearson.com, and you'll need to retain the email permission for that and include it in your sample. I think a really important thing to know is that the majority, if not all, our moderators are also teachers as well, and they will all be going through the same thing that you'll be going through next year. So they will be flexible about timings and understanding the challenges that you and your students will be facing in terms of devising in these complex times. So we've had a question in. Let me just have a look at that. So a question from Katrina. Hello, Katrina. If a student uses a novel or films as a stimuli for devising, can their performance retell this story? It should be used as a starting point. So it may be that there's a particular theme that comes out of it, but to basically translate it into a theatrical performance but keep the same story is something that you might want to consider as being not really applicable here, because the students are having to make some decisions about what happens and you know what happens in the theatrical interpretation. So it's not a direct interpretation of a novel. Georgia has asked about the 1 to 3 stimuli per group or per cohort. That's entirely up to you, Georgia. It may be that you have you give them 3 stimuli, and that's for all the groups in your cohort, for them all to use, or it may be you give them all different ones. It's entirely up to you. You've got a lot of autonomy with that. Paul has, is it, oh no, so is it Paul? Abby has asked, hello Abby, has asked about 7 props that represent the 7 deadly sins. So the 7 deadly sins is the stimulus presented through the props. I think that is maybe pushing it a little bit, because you've got then 7 artifacts rather than 3. And if you did want them to look at the 7 deadly sins, then potentially you could give them a painting that's representing it, or a piece of music that is representing that they would be able to get the same things out of, and maybe don't give them 7 props, because those props could be used later in terms of their devising, but to use them as the stimuli may be pushing the boundaries really of these rules. Stacey, 1 stimuli can be used. That's absolutely fine, because what can happen with the use of 1 stimuli is that the students brainstorm and thought shower, and other ideas come out of it, and other kind of stimuli are produced and created in a response to that initial one. So it's absolutely fine, and there's been lots of centres who have just used 1 prop in the past, and students have been able to meet all the criteria. And Paul has asked about having a group of 2 and a group of 3 in a class of 5. That is going to be possible next year, Paul. Yes. Okay, I'm just going to go back to the presentation now, and then we'll have a look at some of your questions in a bit. So due to the challenges faced by students when trying to devise a performance and also maintaining social distance, the recommended minimum times that we've given may be more flexible in 2021, and students should try to devise work that meets these minimum performance times. However, if the work is under these timings, please remember that these are recommendations, and mark what you see according to the assessment criteria. There is a regulatory requirement that groups must complete a minimum performance time of 4 minutes. So I don't think there should be any issues there in any of your students being able to create work that's at least 4 minutes long. There is no longer a requirement to award 0 marks for performances under the regulatory minimum time requirement. Students whose work doesn't meet the minimum of 4 minutes, you should assess them using the assessment criteria. However, students should be awarded a mark in level 1 or level 2 only. So that's the only restriction really that you need to consider, but hopefully it won't get to that point where your students do less than that amount. So here's some FAQs which may be useful to you, and the first one is this is for teachers who are already teaching it, or if you're a new teacher and you start at a centre where the students are in year 11 and they're halfway through. So what happens if they were halfway through their devising? Are they expected to start again? And no, they're not. I mean, if the students are in the same bubble, or if you're able to teach them in the same original devising groups, then they should continue with the work that they've started. And something to consider is that students can continue with the work that they've been doing, but they're going to have to potentially make some adjustments in terms of the style and the techniques and the structure to accommodate social distancing. It could be an exciting opportunity to further develop their work in new and interesting ways. And if you've seen the news today, there's an announcement that the 2 meters is being reduced to about 1 meter, and by the time we get to September, we may not even have these social distancing rules in place. So I know that you have to plan now, and and that's why we're doing this, is because we're trying to give you as much information so you can be as prepared as possible. But things are changing very quickly, as we all know. So in terms of approaching devising with social distancing in place, I mean, it is going to depend upon your school circumstances and how often you'll be able to see your drama students, how they'll be grouped, and the space that you're working in. And the things that we would suggest are about obviously working in smaller groups and working to the minimum timing rather than the maximum. But there are also other things that you might want to consider in terms of theatrical techniques and devices. So, for example, the use of split stage to indicate distance and different locations and time zones. The use of monologues and direct address, of thought tracking and narration. It may be choral work or shared speech with students in their own space 2 meters or 1 meter apart. Things like where you have speeches that are overlapping and are delivered directly to the audience. You could consider an episodic approach with the use of placards and non-realistic approaches. There could be some movement sequences, solo or distance. There could be movement motif work where all the students are doing the same set of same sequence of movements in different positions on the stage, and that can look really beautiful and effective. Students could work on particular themes such as isolation, bullying, cybercrime. They could even, and they probably will want to, respond to what we've been through and COVID, and it's quite it could be quite a cathartic thing for the students to use this in their work. The use of mime would avoid the need to use props that might need to be shared. You might want to consider using the style and form of theatre and education and a didactic teaching approach to the work. And of course, you need to consider how to support design candidates, which leads on to our next point here, which is about how do we support them. And I mean, one thing to consider is that with sound and lighting designers, it may not necessarily be an issue as such. There are things about the hygiene around lighting boards and operating boards, etc. But it may be that the students who are doing sound and lighting may not be as affected as students who are designing set or costume. So if you do have set designers, you might want to consider about the use of props. And this leads back to the question that was asked earlier about with the 7 deadly sins, that if props are going to be used, that they're personal props and they're not necessarily shared with others, and that they're cleaned thoroughly before and after use. And that considering the consideration of using things like painted flats and backdrops and projections might be a more effective way of creating time and place and setting than using anything else in terms of furniture and things like that. For costume designers, it might be that the performer's family member could take the measurements on behalf of the designer and then pass those on to the designer. The costumes, if they're going to be used, could be washed in your centre, or that they're taken home and kept safe by the performer, and that the performer's responsible for keeping them clean. And that the use of masks is probably best avoided unless that they are the masks that the student is, just one student is using, and that they are cleaning them and maintaining them. And for makeup and hair design, as part of the costume, that the performer would need to potentially apply these themselves rather than have the costume designer facilitate it or anyone do the fitting for them. Can students perform without an audience? Yes, and you as the teacher can be the audience in this case. Of course, you can invite people in as long as they're socially distanced, and it could be that it's other students, it's family and friends who could be in the audience. It's what works in your space, and it's what you could agree is safe within your centre. But from our perspective, the teacher is absolutely fine to be classed as the audience this year. Yes, you do need to still record the devised performance for the moderator and as evidence. And because as it currently stands with what we know, the moderation process is still going to happen. It may be that one of the outcomes from Ofqual is that the submission date is extended because, as you are probably all aware, there's been talk of the written examinations potentially being put back as well later on into the summer term. If you are going to use kind of site-specific locations for performances, or you're performing outside, please try to ensure that the recording is high quality. And sometimes things can be it's better on your phone or on your tablet than it is on some of the recording equipment that are in centres at the moment. So I would just experiment with that before you do the actual final filming. If it's difficult to film in your studio space or wherever you're doing it, ensuring that all the students are on the camera all the time while socially distanced, then please pan and zoom accordingly and do your best to keep the students on camera as much as possible. And that students need to have do the identifications at the beginning of the performance. And obviously this must be conducted with social distancing. If there's a problem and you can't do it for whatever reason, in terms of the recording the identifications, you can do it afterwards as long as the students are easily identifiable in the main performance. The next question is about what adjustments will be made due to the fact that students will have missed over a full term of practical work already. And as I've said, we're still waiting for confirmation about changes that might be made. As it currently stands, I would suggest it's in your interest and in your students' interest to carry on as if nothing is going to change, and then we will be hopefully pleasantly surprised by the information that comes through. But as soon as we know anything, we will let you know as well. Now, moving on to the portfolio, students will record the creative process that they go through to produce their piece of devised drama. They'll answer questions, and these questions are in the specification, to analyse and evaluate the decisions as they go through the process and the final performance. They'll produce a portfolio which can be made up of photographs, drawings, sketches, annotations, notes, audio and or video evidence, or it can be written responses. So this performance and the portfolio is assessed by you, the teacher, and is externally moderated by us. So what we recommend is that if they are doing a written portfolio, that it's between 1,500 and 2,000 words. If they are doing a recorded or verbal portfolio, it's between 8 to 10 minutes. And if they wanted to do a combination, it would be 750 to 1,000 words and between 4 to 5 minutes of recorded evidence. So in terms of getting the right balance, the weighting of the assessment objectives that we looked at earlier, it's that the portfolio is worth 3/4 of the available marks for this component. And that means that obviously the performance is worth 1/4. So it's 2 assessment objectives. And the first one is worth 30 marks, which is create and develop ideas to communicate meaning. And there's the 15 marks from AO4, which is analyze and evaluate their own work. And in the specification, there are all the mark grids, assessment grids for component 1 and component 2. For component 1, they are on pages 20 to 27. In terms of the format, the your students should use the one that you and they feel most comfortable with. We have no preferred format style. The focus should be on the content and how the students are responding to the questions in the specification. It's not necessary for all your students to respond in the same way. Likewise, it's absolutely fine if they all choose to respond in the same way. It's most important that you choose the format that works best for you and your students. We don't want you to feel under pressure to do something different if you're not comfortable with it. It's also important at this stage to consider any support you may require with the portfolio at an early stage. So can the students, can they get their hands on equipment in terms of if they are doing a verbal performance, so can they record bits on their cameras in each session? Will they be given a notebook and encouraged to write down the developments that have happened in the particular rehearsal? And it's worth thinking about, will you try out the different formats with your students to see how best they respond? Because it may be that some of them just are incredibly confident as writers, and some just find it difficult because it's not the way their brain works. But when a camera is in front of them and you ask them the question, they are able to just absolutely go for it and be able to express themselves in a much more successful way than they could have done if they were trying to write them down. These are the 6 questions. These are the questions that are in the specification. And as you can see, they follow the journey of the process that the students are going to go through. So what's the initial response to the stimuli and the intentions? What work did the group do in order to explore the stimuli and start to create ideas? What were the significant moments during the process when rehearsing and refining? How did the student consider genre, structure, character, form, style, and language throughout the process? How effective was your contribution to the final performance? And were you successful in what you set out to achieve? I do get a lot of questions about what form is, and we do have some definitions. We've got a glossary on our website, but basically form is about the decisions that are made in terms of expressing the ideas to an audience. So if, for example, you have a play where there is the use of direct audience address through narrators, and there's some kind of pantomime elements going on the stage in terms of the telling of the story, that's the form. That's a combination of the form of a combination of pantomime and direct audience address. So as well as that, it might be episodic. So again, that's another part of the form. It's decisions made. Okay, so when we talk about genre and style and things, they're the big overarching headings of that's naturalism, that's theatre and education. But form is where it's about, it incorporates some elements of the structure, but it's basically all those decisions that are made in terms of communication. Now, this is guidance that is directly related really to what's going to happen next year. So the portfolio is usually produced with teacher supervision, so the final write-up of it. But we obviously need to have some flexibility for next year. So it may be that within your centre there's kind of blended learning where there's, you're having some classes and then some's going to be at home. So if that's the case, then we just have to go with that. And from your perspective, you just need to be confident that what a student has produced on their own at home, if we're still in this situation by the time they're doing these write-ups, that you're confident that they did it themselves. Students could record their responses to the portfolio questions at home, and the work could be presented on recordings if this is supportive in terms of working from home. Question 3 and 4 focus on refinement and rehearsals, as well as artistic decisions. Social distancing could form a large part of this section very successfully and supportively. Question 5 and 6 focus on the end product, the final design or performance. Students can evaluate and analyse how successful their final performance was and celebrate the successes that they've had in terms of thinking differently and creatively due to social distancing, and also the issues involved that they meant that they did not create a scene or a piece in the way that they had initially wanted to. Now, you may already be aware of this, but we have produced a guidance film and slides to help you with devising at a distance. And I shared these through various means, through my newsletter, and I put them on Facebook, but we've got them on our communities page. So if you want to access them, that's the link. To access our communities page, you need to go to the Contact Us section on our website, or you can go to the subject page for drama, theatre and performing arts, and you'll see a link there as well. Okay, so that was a lot of information on component 1 devising, and I hope that's been useful. I can see that there are some more questions, and what I'll do is I will go through components 2 and 3, and then if there's time we'll go back and look at them. And if I don't answer, as I said before, if you just want to contact me afterwards, and I'll do my best to help, because some of your questions may be very specific to your particular centre. So let's have a look now at component 2, which is the visiting examiner component, and it's externally assessed, and it can only take place in the year that the student is completing the course. So usually with GCSE Drama, it's done over 2 years. So component 2 can only happen in year 11. It's the same rule for component 3. Students should take part in 2 extract performances from 1 text. Across your cohort, you can use as many texts as you wish. So you don't need to just stick to 1. You can, if you want to, have as many as you want, and as long as they meet the requirements, which we will go on to in a moment. Students will need to be familiar with the text as a whole in order to select key extracts and understand the context of them. Now, what we mean about key extracts is basically you can choose any part of the text. So don't get bogged down with thinking, oh no, I really want to do that scene, but it doesn't feel as important as the next scene, and I can't use that scene because there's 11 characters in it, whereas I just want to do a duologue. Do not worry about it. It's absolutely fine. You choose any extract from the play that you're looking at. It's absolutely fine. So I think that answers Nicola's question that she's asking about, or maybe it's not. Maybe she's still talking about component 1. As well as the students doing a performance or doing the design, they also need to explain their intention for the pieces. So as a performer or a designer, therefore, you need to ensure that the students read the whole play. So that should be standard, but in some instances it isn't. So please make sure that they do. Now, students aren't going to be assessed on these intentions, that these 100 to 200 words that they're going to submit. But so what happens is that the students will write them, and we'll go on to this in a moment about what they actually have to write. But it's not marked, but the examiner needs to know what the intentions are, and I'll explain a little bit more in a moment. Philip has asked Philippa was given an answer. So can students perform a different character in each extract? Yes, Gemma, that's absolutely fine. There's also the opportunity for a student, if they wanted to perform in the first extract and design in the second one, or vice versa. So there's a lot of different options going on. So yes, we have provided some guidance on page 28 of the specification in terms of what types of plays you can use, which we'll look at in a moment. And if you do have design students, they need to work with at least one performer, so they can't do this without working with a performer. Okay. So these are the specific areas of assessment for performers. They're going to be assessed on vocal and physical skills. They're going to be assessed on characterization and communication, and they're going to be assessed on artistic intention and the style, genre, theatrical conventions that are being used and that are really relatable to the text that they've chosen. For designers, we'll be assessing their design skills, their communication and contribution to the performance as a whole, and artistic intentions, style, genre, theatrical conventions being reflected in the designs that they come up with. You can see in the specification the marks that will be awarded for component 2. So there are separate mark grids for performers and designers, and the focus is on applying theatrical skills to realize artistic intentions. So this component is purely assessing performance or design realization. It's marked out of 48, and because 2 extracts are being assessed, they're marked separately, with each being 24 marks each. In terms of the communication of intention, as I said, there's no specific marks that are being awarded, but the examiner needs to know what the intentions are in order to assess the practical work that they see. So, for example, with a performer, they are going to be talking about the role that or the roles that they're playing, what's happening to the character or characters in the key extract that they're looking at, what are the character's objectives, motivations, and feelings, and how they're interpreting the character. Now, it is only 100 to 200 words per extract, so they don't have to go into a lot of detail, but they can make it clear exactly what they're doing. So if they are going to perform as, Skin Lad from Road, that's what they're going to be writing about here, and they're going to be talking about the specific monologue, because I think Skin Lad does do 3 or 4 monologues through Road. They're going to be talking about the specific monologue that they're going to be performing in that extract. So they will be saying Skin Lad is on almost like on a hunger strike, and it's being disaffected by the social conditions that he's in, etc., etc. So that's what the student will need to be talking about, because if they say in their intentions that Skin Lad is a happy-go-lucky, lovable lad who's out with his mates and they're having a great time and all he can see is positivity, then that's not really reflective of what the student understands about the character in this context. So it's really just confirming what the student intends the examiner to see when they do this performance. I hope that's clear in terms of that as a requirement. And then in terms of the designer, they're going to be answering very similar questions about the design role that they're fulfilling, what the design concept is in the key extract that they've selected, how they've made the interpretation, and what they're hoping to communicate to the audience. So each student that you have will be doing 2 performances or 2 designs, and they'll write 2 intentions. So they'll write 1 for each extract that they're doing. The question around the use of bad language in devised and scripted pieces from Nicola. As an exam board, we accept that bad language can be used really effectively and it can impart meaning, and there are a lot of plays available. In fact, the majority of plays available, I would suggest, that has some bad language featured at some point. So what we would say to you is, from our perspective, we don't necessarily have an issue with, you know, moderate use of bad language. From your centre's perspective, that might be a different story. So I would suggest that you speak to your SLTs, etc., about what would be allowed, because it would be awful if students had done a lot of work and then at the last minute they were unable to do it because of the offence it might cause because of your own school policy. We do also have a policy in the back of our specification, which is about the choice of stimuli and plays, and about just being really aware, really, of potentially choosing things that are really provocative and could be considered to be too controversial. So whatever you do, just please be aware of the impact that language and content in existing plays may have on your students, their families, and your centre. In terms of Duncan's question, hello Duncan, it is possible for students to play genders other than their own. We don't have any issues about that. I would suggest that you approach it in the same way that you would do if you were casting anything, and it's whether or not the particular student is able to meet the demands of that role. There are some roles for some students that they wouldn't be able to do, and it's their own gender. So I would just say we don't have an issue, and it's really more to do with what your student is capable of and whether they can cope with the demands of playing a different gender. Here are some FAQs. We've got the first one is, can students just do monologues? Yes, they can, and that's absolutely fine. That's been available as an option since the course began in 2016. So if students do want to do it, and especially in the light of where we are in the next academic year, go ahead and do it. It's absolutely fine. Will there still be a visiting examiner? This is something that might change. It may be that we allow you the option of recording the work yourself and then submitting the recording to us for examination, because there may be issues around examiners being able to visit, you being able to accept them, timings, further lockdowns, etc. So that is potentially an option that will be available. Will there be any adjustments to this component, e.g. only on one extract rather than two? We don't know this yet. That might happen, not sure. Will the timings remain the same? We don't know. As with the guidance that I gave you for component one, it might be worth considering aiming at the lower end of the minimum timings for the moment. And in terms of designers about realizing their work, again, I would follow the same guidance that I gave you for component one about lighting and sound not necessarily being an issue, but with costume and props. Safety and caution is paramount, so I would say adopt a similar approach. Okay, so some questions. Gemma, yes, you can join two scenes together. I would say that so in terms of editing the text, it is possible to do, but please avoid the idea of, oh, we'll take a scene from the start and then one from the end and put them together. That's not what we would like you to do, and that's not within the spirit of this assessment. So what you can do, for example, is there might be a scene that you like, and then there's another scene that is just not good, and then the next scene that follows is back to those characters again, and therefore that's fine. So you can edit out scenes in that way, and you can edit out lines, but if you're going to do wholesale changes and remove like a 20-minute chunk or an hour chunk, please don't do that, because that's not, and it's also, if you do that, it's going to make it really difficult to find two extracts from the text. It is possible to cut out other characters if it makes sense when you cut them out, and if it doesn't, and you're then left with a situation where you think, oh, I'm going to have to amend lines or add new lines, then that's not possible to do. You cannot adjust text and you cannot add new lines in. So yes to editing out characters, but if only if it makes sense. So if there's bad language and you want to change it again, no, please don't. It's like you can take stuff out, but you cannot put things in. It's the same with cultural references as well. So if, for instance, you're doing bouncers and you'd like to change references to 80s culture to 2010 culture, it's not possible to do. So you need to stick to the text. You can take things out, but you can't add things in. Okay, so that's component 2. Let's move now to component 3, which is the written exam. And there are 8 set texts, and I'm sure that you're all aware of these. They're listed in the specification. There are 8 set texts. That's very difficult to say. There are 8 set texts for you to choose from, and the text you choose must contrast with your component 2 choices. So we have 2 lists. We have list A and list B. In list A, there are 4 texts, and these were all written, the originals were written before 1954. And then we have a list B, which are plays which were written after the year 2000. So you're going to choose 1 play from those 8 texts, not 1 from each list, but 1 play from those 8. And how it will work is as thus. So there must be a contrast, and this is an off-qual requirement, so it's the same with all the exam boards. There has to be a contrast between the set text that you choose for component 3 and the plays that you choose for component 2, and the contrast must be in terms of time, i.e. when it's written, genre or style, and the playwright. So here's an example. The first one is you choose to do The Crucible, which is in list A, and it's by Arthur Miller, and it's listed as an historical drama. So when you choose your text in component 2, you can choose anything written after 1954 that's not written by Arthur Miller and is not counted as an historical drama. So those 2 examples we've given there are billions, but these 2 are A Taste of Honey by Sheila Delaney, written in 58, kitchen sink drama, or Mark Wheeler's Missing Dan Nolan, which was written in 2005 and is verbatim. If you chose a text from list B, i.e. those written after 2000, the year 2000, so in this example it's DNA by Dennis Kelly, which is a black comedy. For component 2, you can choose any play that's written before the year 2000 that's not written by Dennis Kelly and isn't a black comedy. So the examples that we've got here are Noises Off by Michael Frayn, which is written in 1982 and is a British farce, or Medea by Euripides, which was originally written in 431 BC and is a Greek tragedy. Now, I put that one in because what it means is that if you've got a contemporary version of an ancient Greek play, like Medea, or any of the Greek plays, then you can use any of those contemporary versions. So so basically it means that you can choose a play from like DNA, which was written in 2008, I think, and also you could then choose a contemporary version of an ancient Greek tragedy. So that's quite good in terms of your choices. The exam the written exam was first sat in May 2018, and originally it was an hour and a half. And this year, it was going to be an hour and 45 minutes, but as we know, it got cancelled. So next year it will be an hour and 45 minutes. And we extended this in regard to teacher feedback, because they said that students just really wanted 15 minutes extra. They weren't able to put everything in. So it just gives a little bit of breathing space for your students. So there are two sections, and section A is about the set text and is worth 45 marks, and we provide an extract of the set text in the exam paper, so students don't take in a copy. They will be given the extract, and then they'll be answering questions on that extract. And the questions range between short and longer ones, and they focus on what a performer potentially would do, a director and a designer. So it would be good, if possible, to do some practical explorations of the set text, and even within a social distancing context, it's still possible to do, because there are lots of teachers who, when they are delivering the set text, that they do explore it as much as possible, and in some instances they stage scenes, they do the whole play, because it's a really useful way of the students kind of it becoming almost like muscle memory in terms of their knowledge and understanding of the requirements of the play, especially from the perspective of a performer. So, you know, there are different ways to approach it in terms of analysing the form and structure, the content and the characters, which can be done as a mixture of, you know, theoretical analysis and practical work. Looking at particular scenes, experimenting with staging and blocking, and it may be that it's not necessarily about them physically being able to do it because they can't in the space that you're in, but using model boxes, using you know, small kind of chess pieces, and you know, having a working models really of different types of staging and how it could work. Staging the whole play or taking part in informal performances, working together to look at design ideas potentially of creating a model box, or having a look at some costumes and potential materials that could be used, and of course, if possible, having a look at previous productions, so watching recordings, and depending on the text that you choose, there are an array of recordings that you could access. There are also books that have been produced by some of the playwrights to support it, in light of them being used as set text. So there's some really good useful material out there for you to access. We also have a guide on our website, which is interpreting text for performance, and again, this has some ideas into how you could explore for these set texts. In terms of the written exam, well, this is an example of the type of question that you could see. So we give the extract, and then that's the type of question. So as a performer, they're going to play viola and explain 2 ways you'd use vocal skills to play this character in this extract. Now, we're not dealing with this is about every student will answer the same question. So if you have male students and female students, they'll all answer the question on viola. So that's one thing to work through with your students when you're looking at the set text, is that they could get asked questions on any of the characters, not just the one that pertains to their own gender. Section B is about a piece of live theatre that they've seen, and they'll be asked 2 questions about the performance and the design. And students can use 500 words of notes on a performance that they have seen. Now, usually, in usual times, it would be a requirement within our specification that students see a piece of live theatre. Now, that's obviously not going to happen. And as we know, the majority, if not all, of theatres aren't going to open again in this year. It's going to be January at the earliest. So there is absolutely no requirement if you have students who will be doing component 3 next year that they need to see a piece of live theatre. So they can use any recorded live productions, and as I'm sure you know, there's a lot that's available at the moment, and if you have been working with your students, then you may have been using some of these for practice or for just general, discussion points or knowledge. So there's the work that the National Theatre have been releasing each week, which is just extraordinary. And if you saw Small Island this week, then your mind will be blown. And A Midsummer Night's Dream is on this Thursday, and I went to see it and at the Bridge Theatre, and it was just so extraordinary. And I really hope that it's able to capture the essence and the magic that they were able to produce in that show. You can use any work on digital theatre. The BBC have had lots and lots of stuff on recently, and they continue to do. The BBC is a very good resource, and if you're lucky enough to record it, then you've got it forever. But they have things on iPlayer for a long time. There are theatre companies such as Spy Monkey, who've recently been releasing all the recordings for free for a limited time. So if you aren't, if you're not aware of these things that I'm talking about, then please get out there, get on Twitter, because and follow these companies, because they're all doing things to keep people interested in their work, to keep their support, because they're going to need the money when they start back up again. So so basically, in terms of students being able to use anything, yes, that's absolutely fine. I can see a question there from Nicola about students being able to use, can students use different recordings? Yeah, that's not a problem. They don't all have to use the same one. Lucy's asked about cut-off date for online productions. I mean, it's that thing really about, it doesn't, I would say that it doesn't actually matter that much anymore, especially in light of where we are now. I mean, I would say that there are some recordings that you really shouldn't use in this context because they're just not very good. But I would say that in terms of if the production quality of the recording is fine, then something from 2012 could be sufficient. It's not necessarily going to be a problem. I would say that if you can use recordings from the recent past, that would be a really good option. But it may be that you've got something in mind that you think would be worth using. So the mark scheme for component 3 is not in the specification, and the reason why it's not is because it changes each year according to the focus of the particular questions. So, but the basic principles remain the same. So if you want to have a look at the mark schemes, they are available on our website, and you'll be able to see the type of questions and the type of responses that are allowed. The interesting thing about the component 3 mark schemes is that they're not exhaustive. I think that's the right way to say it. But they are indicative. So in other words, it's not like the mark scheme has all the answers. It can be that the student can respond with some things that are applicable, and the examiner will award marks for. So hopefully that will, because there are myriad possible responses, especially the ones about for how they would perform and how they would direct. So it just gives a bit more scope for students to be able to respond uniquely. Okay, this is a suggested 2-year overview. Oh, that's a good idea, Stacey, to access more marks. Yes, very good. So this is a suggested 2-year overview. And one interesting thing about the way our components are structured is that you might think, if you've not done this before, that you need to teach component 1 first, and then 2, and then 3. But how we would suggest it is that in the first year, that you don't go in with devising straight away, that actually you could look at the set text and do it as practically as possible. You may also want to dive in with some practical work and some skills-based work for performance and design for what they could do in component 2. But maybe don't go straight in with devising, because it may be that they're just not ready to be able to create their own work without having seen how other professionals have made work. So the suggestion that we've given here, which you can ignore or you can go with, is that you do some practical sessions to begin with, and then you look at the set text and looking at the skills and techniques involved in how it was made and how it can be interpreted. In the spring term, potentially carry on with that, and then once they've got used to the idea of seeing other people's work, you're showing them recordings of live performances, and they can see what's expected. Then you begin to explore the idea of devising and creating their own work, which leads into the summer term, where potentially they can begin it, and hopefully there won't be any lockdowns next year, and they'll be able to finish it by the end of June, start of July, which would then leave the second year, the year 11, where they can focus on the autumn term with the component 2 performance work. They can be looking at recordings of live theatre. They can still be having a look at the set texts. And then usually what happens with component 2 is that there's a visit and examiner window, which is usually the start of January to the end of March. Now that might change completely next year, but that's how it usually is. And then that would lead into the summer term, where you would send the work to your moderator for component 1 by the 15th of May, and that the students in this example would be doing the external examination on the 17th of May. But next year that may all change completely, so that the dates for component 2 may be extended or go longer, and that the dates for submitting the component 1 work and the component 3 exam may be pushed back into June, July, but we will find out when more information is given. Now, at this point, I thought it would be a good idea if I take you on a little tour of the website and how this is going to work with my Luddite approach to technology. Can't even say the word, but let's see if I can do this. So I'm going to, hopefully you should be seeing this now. This should be appearing on the screen. So you should now see on the screen the web page. Yes, you can. That's lovely. So what we have on here is this format is going to change soon, so just please ignore this because it's awful. But we have the course materials, and just going to make that a little bit bigger. Oh, wait a minute. Sorry, I told you I was awful at this. Please forgive me, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, so in the course materials, you've got everything that you need. So when it eventually loads, oh, this is going well, isn't it? Very sorry. Seems to be taking a while. So whilst it's loading, I'll just have a look at your other questions. Thank you, Nicola. Oh, look, it's taking its time, isn't it? So Tammy has asked about another form of comedy. So if doing DNA, black comedy, can you do another comedy? Yeah, you can. You can. That's absolutely fine. Just don't do a black one. Right. Okay. It looks like we're almost there now, ladies and gentlemen. So what we've got on the screen is you've got the specification and the glossary. And when I was saying before that about the terminology of like structure, form, genre, etc., you can find it all in that glossary. Sample assessment material is for component 3. So you can see 2 examples there, which you may want to use. On the left hand side, you click that and then that will take you to the exam materials. Now in here, obviously for June 2020 there aren't any, but for June 2019 what you have, and this is really useful if you've not taught it before, is you can have a look at the exam papers, the question papers for paper 3 or component 3, the examiner report, but then and the mark scheme. But then you've also got the examiner reports for component 1 and component 2 as well. Now these can be really useful in terms of understanding good practice and what other people have been doing and what to avoid. And then we've also got the same for June 2018 as well. So if you've never taught component 3 before, for example, you will now have 4 examples of papers that you can use. Moving to forms and administration. Each year we release an administrative support guide, which includes all the really useful information that you need on dates, etc. And we've got guidance there on visiting examiners, etc. And then we've got here all the templates that you need for the work that you're doing for component 1, so your mark sheets and coursework authentication form. We've got a sign-off form for component 3, and we've got the forms that you need to send to your examiner if they're coming in. And then in this final section, we have got teaching and learning materials. So again, lots of really useful things here for you. So we've got a course planner that you might want to use. We've got tons of exemplar material for all 3 components, and for every set text. We've got some really good examples of high marking work for virtually all of the set texts now. So please have a look at those. Hope that you find those useful, but there's a lot going on. We've also got things like recordings of our examiners, our senior examiner team, talking about good and not so good responses from students. We have got an FAQ, which you might want to use. We have got guides, so I'm sure that the majority of you have seen this, but that's the component 1 top tips for devising at a distance, which you can have a look at. We've got really detailed set text guides that you might find useful if you've not seen those before. We've also got guidance on portfolios, how to interpret text, which you can use for components 2 and 3, how to devise, and some ideas on approaches there. We've got a performance text suggestion list there, which you might want to have a look at. It's not exhaustive. These are just ones. There's about 300 or 400 in there that you might want to use. We've got tons of past training content that you can have a look at and download, and some more examples in there. And finally, we have got a scheme of work that you could use. Other bits of the website that you might find useful, if you go to subjects at the top and then go down to drama, theatre and performing arts, this is a page where I put up some useful information as well. Oh my God, when it eventually loads, honestly, it's like dial-up. What's going on here? Anyway, follow that link Oh, there it is. Okay, so you will see here guidance that I've put on. Oh, look, there's my awful face. But you can also get the link to the community pages here where you can share ideas, you can ask questions. There's my Twitter, there's my telephone number, and you can sign up for updates. You can also get all the specs. We've got FAQs, useful documents. If you put a nice tweet on Twitter and I like it or retweet it, then you'll end up showing on the on this page. So there's lots of useful things for you there. Okay, so we have reached the end. I hope that this has been useful for you. I hope that you've got all the information that you need. If you want to get in touch with me, please do so. There are all my details. Thank you very much for joining this afternoon. If I haven't answered any of your questions, I'm very sorry, and please send them through to me, and I will do my best to get back in touch with you as soon as I can. For the moment, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. Take care of yourselves. Good luck with all your planning. Let's hope that we can get to the end of this nightmare as soon as we possibly can. And take care of yourselves and everyone around you. Good luck, and see you all soon. Okay, thanks very much. Bye bye.